If I could go back to 25, I wouldn't aim for perfection. I wouldn't chase the clean apartment, the flawless resume, the curated social media feed, the bulletproof relationship, the gold star version of womanhood. Because perfection, I've learned, is a moving target. Just when you think you've hit it, it shifts, and you're running again, tired, out of breath, but smiling. Always smiling. Because that's what perfect people do. At 25, I thought if I just worked a little harder, looked a little better, earned a little more, loved a little quieter, I'd finally feel safe. But perfection didn't keep me safe. It kept me stuck, trapped in cycles of anxiety, terrified of mistakes, haunted by the idea that if I slipped, even once, people would see the mess I truly was. I didn't want to be messy. I wanted to be admired. I didn't want to be human. I wanted to be enough. But now I know. Peace never comes from perfection. It comes from letting go. Letting go of the image, the pressure, the performance, and gently, bravely choosing rest, choosing softness, choosing peace, even when the world calls it lazy. This is the story I wish someone told me at 25. Maybe it's the one you need now. Perfection wasn't a goal for me. It was survival. I didn't chase perfect because I was arrogant. I chased it because I was scared. Scared of being wrong. Scared of being too much or not enough. Scared that if I made one mistake, people would finally see the truth. That I wasn't lovable. Just acceptable. If I was flawless. So I built a life that looked good. On the outside. I kept my room clean, even when my head was a mess. I replied to every message with a smiley face, even when my chest was tight with anxiety. I offered help before anyone asked because being needed felt safer than being seen. I worked hard, always harder, because I thought if I was productive, no one could accuse me of being weak. I never missed a deadline, never showed up unprepared, never said, I can't. I was the strong one, the put-together one, the achiever. And I told myself that was empowerment. But deep down, perfect was my armor. It was the wall I built between myself and the fear of rejection. Because if I was perfect, no one could leave me, right? If I was perfect, I wouldn't be replaceable. If I was perfect, I'd finally feel safe in a world that felt unpredictable. But the thing about armor, it's heavy, and it keeps out love just as much as it keeps out pain. People admired me, but they didn't know me. I had friends, but no one I cried in front of. I was inspiring, but inside, I was exhausted. And the worst part? I thought that was normal. I thought that's what success looked like. But what I didn't realize is that when you're always trying to be perfect, you're never really present. You're editing every moment instead of living it. You're constantly calculating your worth. You're waiting to arrive at some mythical version of yourself who's finally enough. But she never comes. Perfection doesn't save you. It isolates you. It promises safety and delivers burnout. And at 25, I wore that armor every single day. Until one day, I couldn't anymore. The most dangerous kind of exhaustion is the one nobody notices. Not even you. At 25, I was tired all the time, but I didn't call it exhaustion. I called it ambition. I called it discipline. I called it what everyone else was doing too. I woke up already tense, like I was late for a life I hadn't started yet. My jaw was always tight. My shoulders never relaxed. Even rest felt like something I had to earn. I wasn't falling apart, so no one worried. I was still functioning, so no one asked. And I didn't tell them. Because how do you explain a tiredness that isn't physical? How do you admit you're exhausted when, on paper, your life looks fine? I wasn't burned out from doing too much. I was burned out from trying to do everything right. Right way to speak. Right way to dress. Right way to succeed. Right way to want things. Every decision felt like a test. Every mistake felt catastrophic. Every quiet moment felt like falling behind. So I stayed busy. Busy enough not to feel. Busy enough not to question. Busy enough not to slow down and realize how unhappy I was. At night, I'd lie in bed replaying conversations in my head. Did I say the wrong thing? Did I sound stupid? Did they think less of me? I'd promise myself I'd do better tomorrow. Be sharper, kinder, more impressive, less needy, more composed. And then I'd wake up and do it all again. People said things like, "You're so driven. I don't know how you do it all. I wish I had your discipline." They didn't see the panic underneath. They didn't see how much effort it took to look effortless. Because perfection is quiet torture. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It tells you just a little more. You can rest after this. Don't stop now. You're almost enough. And you believe it, until one day you realize you don't remember the last time you felt calm, or joyful, or at ease in your own body. You're not sad, just numb. Not depressed, just empty. Not broken, just worn thin. That's the exhaustion no one sees, the kind that comes from holding yourself together too tightly for too long. And at 25, I thought that was strength. I didn't know it was a warning. At first, I chased perfection because I thought it would make me feel proud. I believed that if I just worked hard enough, refined myself enough, mastered everything I touched, I'd finally feel powerful, in control, invincible. But somewhere along the way, perfection stopped being a goal. It became a cage. And behind its polished bars, I was terrified. Because once you've convinced the world you've got it all together, you start to believe that falling apart is no longer an option. So you tighten, you hide, you perform harder. You become afraid of rest, because what if rest makes you irrelevant? You become afraid of vulnerability, because what if people see you're not as perfect as they think? You become afraid of failure, because failure feels like exposure, like truth, like proof that you were never enough to begin with. At 25, I wasn't driven anymore. I was scared of being ordinary, scared of disappointing people, scared of becoming someone no one admired. And that fear, it ruled everything. I'd reread texts 5 times before hitting send. I'd obsess over tiny mistakes no one else noticed. I'd apologize for things that weren't wrong, just to keep the peace. And worst of all, I avoided anything I wasn't already great at. I didn't try new things unless I was sure I could succeed. I didn't open up unless I knew it would be received well. I didn't risk softness or honesty or anything that might reveal a crack in the image I'd worked so hard to build. Because when perfection is your identity, any imperfection feels like death. That's what no one tells you about high standards. Sometimes they're not high. They're punishing. They're fear in disguise. Fear that if you slow down, you'll be forgotten. Fear that if you're real, you'll be rejected. Fear that if you're average, you'll disappear. But here's the truth. Perfection is not power. Presence is. Being fully here, fully human, flaws, fears, softness, and all, that's what creates connection. That's what builds joy. That's what leads to peace. But at 25, I didn't know that yet. All I knew was this. The higher I climbed the ladder of perfection, the more terrified I was of falling, and the lonelier it felt at the top. It was something small, a 2-slide presentation for work. Nothing high stakes, nothing that would make or break my future. But I spent hours on it anyway, changing the font, adjusting the margins, swapping out one word for another, and then changing it back, zooming in on every detail like it was going to be judged in a museum. And for what? Just so someone would look at it and nod? Just so I could feel like I did it right? That night, as the clock passed midnight and my eyes started to burn, a question floated to the front of my mind. What if this is already enough? I stopped clicking. I leaned back. I stared at the screen. Not with panic, but with honesty. And I asked myself, would fixing that alignment actually matter? No. Would rewording that sentence change how this lands? Not really. Would staying up another hour actually make me proud? Or just more tired? Definitely tired. So I did something radical for me at the time. I clicked send. Just like that. Not with a flourish, not with certainty, just a quiet surrender. And as soon as the email whooshed out of my inbox, I expected to feel dread. But instead, I felt relief. Not because the work was perfect, but because I let it be done. That night, I slept more deeply than I had in weeks. And when I woke up the next day, nothing bad happened. No one sent a disappointed reply. No one pointed out a typo. No one questioned my value. It was just fine. Not flawless. Not groundbreaking. Just fine. And in that moment, I realized something I'd been too afraid to see. So much of the pressure I lived under was pressure I had placed on myself. Not because I wanted to excel, but because I was terrified of being average. Because I thought if I wasn't outstanding, I was invisible. Because I thought if I didn't prove my worth constantly, I'd lose it. But letting something be good enough didn't make me lazy. It made me human. And it gave me space to ask deeper questions. What am I doing all this for? What am I trying to prove? And to whom? What would it look like to be at peace with myself, not just proud of my performance? That night, a small door opened. A door to a life where I didn't have to carry everything on my back. where I could set something down and still be safe, still be loved, still be enough. It was the first time I let it be good enough. And it was the first time in years I didn't feel like I was failing. It was a Sunday, the kind of Sunday where your to-do list tries to pull you out of bed before your body is ready. Emails to answer, meal prep, work out, clean the apartment, journal, hydrate, meditate, be that girl, the productive one, the organized one, the version of me who didn't let the weekend go to waste. But that morning, something inside me said, no, not loudly, not angrily, just gently, a quiet rebellion in the form of stillness. I didn't jump up to clean. I didn't make a list. I didn't try to earn rest by checking boxes. Instead, I made tea, sat on the floor in my oversized t-shirt, let the sunlight spill across the rug, and just existed. No background podcast telling me how to be better, no motivational quote of the day, just me, and silence and stillness. And in that stillness, a wave of guilt came rushing in. You should be doing something. You're wasting time. This isn't what growth looks like. That voice, the one I had trusted for years, wasn't guiding me. It was pressuring me. Because somewhere along the way, I had confused peace with laziness, rest with weakness, ease with failure. I believed that if I wasn't constantly proving my worth, I'd lose it. But that morning, for the first time, I chose not to listen. I chose peace, not performative peace, not a bubble bath posted on Instagram. Real peace, the kind that isn't cute, the kind that doesn't earn praise, the kind that asks for nothing in return. I didn't check off a single thing that day. I didn't fix my life. I didn't optimize my routine. I just breathed, and I felt it, that flicker of enoughness I had spent years trying to earn from other people. I felt it from within, not because I had done anything, but because I finally allowed myself to stop. No goals, no proving, no more building my identity around how much I could carry. That day I learned, peace is not a reward. It's a right. You don't have to hustle for it. You don't have to be perfect to deserve it. You can choose it at any time by simply saying, I don't need to prove myself today. I just need to be. And being was enough. Letting go sounds beautiful, in theory. We post about it, write it on sticky notes, make it our lock screen, let go and let peace in. But in practice, letting go can feel like dying. At 25, when I started choosing peace over perfection, it didn't feel empowering at first. It felt like I was unraveling, because for so long, I didn't just strive for perfection. I was it. Or at least, I thought I was. It was how I introduced myself without words. The polished resume, the thoughtful text, the always there friend, the clean apartment, the poised response. Being put together wasn't just a preference. It was my identity. So when I stopped obsessing over how I looked, or how fast I replied, or how productive I was, I didn't feel free. I felt empty. Because what happens when you let go of the version of yourself the world applauds? Who's left when the performance ends? There were moments I stared at myself in the mirror and wondered, if I'm not the overachiever, who am I? If I stop being the one everyone can count on, will anyone still want me around? If I'm not impressive, am I still enough? Letting go forced me to sit in the discomfort of those questions, and it hurt, because perfection, for all its toxicity, felt like purpose. It gave me something to chase, something to measure, something that made me feel in control. Without it, I had to face the parts of myself I'd buried under productivity, the fear, the insecurity, the ache of wanting to be chosen without having to earn it. And that's the thing people don't say about healing. Sometimes it feels worse before it feels better, because you're not just losing habits, you're losing the identity that came with them. But here's what I discovered on the other side of that grief. I didn't lose myself. I lost the illusion of myself, the polished, palatable, people-pleasing version I created to survive. And underneath her was someone softer, someone freer, someone real. She didn't always know what to say. She wasn't always the best in the room. She cried more than I expected, laughed louder than was ladylike, didn't care about being liked every second of the day. But she was mine, and she wasn't performing. Letting go isn't about abandoning who you are. It's about returning to the you that existed before the world told you who to be. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's disorienting. But it's also the only way to find peace that actually lasts. Not peace that comes from being perfect, but peace that comes from being you. I used to think peace would come when everything was finally in place, when my skin cleared up, when my inbox hit zero, when I no longer said the wrong thing or replayed awkward conversations at 2 a.m., when I was the best version of myself, calm, confident, always composed. But that peace never came, because perfection is a finish line that moves every time you get close. And I was tired of running, so I stopped. Not all at once, but little by little, I stopped trying to iron out every flaw, stopped trying to explain every emotion, stopped apologizing for being a work in progress. And in that space, in the messy middle, something gentle began to grow. Peace. Not the kind you post about, not the kind you find in 5 Easy Steps, but the kind that sits quietly in your chest and says, "You're okay. Even now. Even like this." I found peace in the dishes left undone overnight. In the text, I didn't have energy to answer right away. In the moment I cried during a conversation and didn't apologize for it. I found peace in letting people see the cracks. Because the truth is, we all have them. And pretending we don't is exhausting. When I stopped trying to be flawless, I started connecting for real. My friendships deepened. Not because I had it together, but because I finally let people in. I let them see me tired, frustrated, unsure. And instead of pulling away, they came closer. Because imperfection isn't what pushes people away. Inauthenticity is. No one can love you fully if they've only met your mask. And the wildest thing, the more I embraced the mess, the more I started to like myself. Not for my accomplishments, not for how I looked on a good day, but for who I was when I wasn't trying so hard. That girl, she was kind, and funny in awkward ways, and thoughtful, and a little intense sometimes, but only because she felt things deeply. And for the first time, I didn't want to change her. Peace, I learned, isn't the absence of flaws. It's the presence of self-acceptance. It's waking up and not needing to fix yourself before you can start your day. It's making space for the parts of you that are still healing. It's realizing that being human isn't a problem to solve. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of peace. You just have to stop hiding from yourself. When I stopped performing, some people left. They didn't storm out. They just slowly drifted, stopped replying as often, stopped inviting me, stopped needing me once I stopped being always available, always polished, always on. And that hurt. It really did. Because part of me thought, maybe I was only lovable when I was perfect. But for every person who disappeared when I started being real, someone else leaned in closer. Not because I was impressing them, but because I wasn't trying to anymore. They saw me on the days I didn't smile much. They listened when my thoughts came out messy. They stayed when I didn't have answers. They didn't need me to sparkle. They just needed me to show up. There was something healing about that. About sitting on a couch with someone who doesn't flinch when you cry. About laughing in the middle of a vulnerable sentence and not feeling embarrassed. About sending a, "Hey, I'm not okay," text and receiving, "I'm here," without needing to explain yourself. I didn't know friendships could feel like permission. To be tired, to be moody, to not be okay all the time. But they can. They should. The people who stayed didn't care about my filtered life. They didn't need the version of me who overextended just to be loved. They loved the girl who paused mid-sentence because she was still figuring out how she felt. They loved the girl who asked for space without guilt. They loved the girl who finally stopped apologizing for being a little too deep, too sensitive, too real. And in their presence, I learned something vital. The right people don't love you despite your imperfections. They love you through them. They don't require your silence to feel secure. They don't punish your honesty with distance. They don't make your boundaries feel like betrayals. They make space. Not because they're perfect either, but because they're real too. And real recognizes real. So to the ones who left, I release you. No bitterness, just clarity. You were never meant to stay if I had to hide myself to keep you. But to the ones who stayed, thank you. Thank you for holding space when I didn't know who I was without my armor. Thank you for showing me that connection doesn't require perfection. Thank you for reminding me that love, at its best, is not earned. It's given. You helped me see that the more real I became, the less alone I felt. When I was younger, I thought the flex was being flawless. Sharp outfit, perfect timing, brilliant comeback, always achieving, always polished, always on. I thought power lived in being impressive, the kind of person who turned heads when they walked in, who seemed untouchable, unbothered, unbreakable. But now, I know better. Peace is the real flex. You know what's powerful? Walking into a room and not needing to be the best dressed, most successful, most admired person there. Just showing up, fully present, fully enough, without trying to prove anything. You know what's powerful? Not reacting to every opinion like it's a threat. Letting someone misunderstand you and not correcting them, because your self-worth isn't on trial. You know what's powerful? Resting. Not resting after the grind. Not resting as a reward. Just resting. Because your body deserves it. Because you're allowed to stop. You know what's powerful? Letting things be good enough. Sending the text even if it's not perfectly worded. Wearing the outfit even if it's not the best version of you. Laughing too loud, crying too easily, showing up as you. No edits, no filter, no apology. That's peace. And peace is strength. It takes strength to stop performing, to disappoint the people who only loved your compliance, to say no when it would be easier to say yes, to not be the person everyone likes because you chose to be the person you trust. You don't need more hustle to be whole. You don't need to be admired to be valuable. You don't need a perfect life to have a meaningful one. You just need peace, not the kind that comes from getting everything right, the kind that comes from releasing the belief that you ever had to. And the wildest part? When you stop trying so hard to be impressive, you become magnetic. Because people crave what they can feel, not what they can rank. And peace? Peace is felt. It softens your presence. It grounds your voice. It makes people feel safe around you, not because you're perfect, but because you're not pretending. That's the flex, not the resume, not the glow up, not the constant wins. A regulated nervous system, a quiet mind, a body that's not bracing all the time, a heart that knows it doesn't have to earn love. That's power. That's peace. And once you feel it, you'll never want the applause again. If you're 25 right now, you're probably carrying more than anyone can see. Dreams you haven't said out loud, fears that whisper to you in quiet moments, expectations you never agreed to but still try to meet every single day. You might wake up already feeling behind, like there's a version of you were supposed to be by now. Smarter, stronger, happier, more together. And maybe you look around and wonder, how is everyone else doing it? They're not. They're just editing their struggles better. Because 25 isn't about having it figured out. It's about finally realizing that no one does. We're all just trying, stumbling, healing, unlearning, trying to love ourselves in a world that profits off our self-doubt. Trying to feel okay without having to perform all the time. And if you're exhausted, love, it's not because you're weak. It's because you've been strong for too long in ways no one clapped for. If I could sit with you right now, on your messy floor, with your half-finished coffee, in the silence between texts, while you scroll and wonder what you're missing, I'd tell you this. You are not late. You are not failing. You do not need to become perfect to be worthy. You are already enough, not because of what you've achieved, but because of who you've survived being. And I know it's hard to let go. Letting go of the pressure, letting go of the hustle, letting go of the identity that told you your value was tied to how put together you could be. But here's what's waiting for you on the other side. Peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't need permission. The kind that shows up in quiet mornings and slow days. The kind that lets you breathe in your own skin, even when things are messy, even when you're not at your best. You deserve that. Not someday. Not when you've healed. Not when you've accomplished more. Now. If you're 25 right now, choose softness. Not because you're weak, but because you've been hardened by survival, and now you deserve to rest. Choose boundaries. Not because you're cold, but because your peace is sacred. Choose the slower path. Not because you lack ambition, but because you're brave enough to not burn yourself to the ground for success. Choose joy. Not the kind you earn, the kind you allow. Choose yourself, even if people don't understand. Even if it means being misunderstood. Even if it means walking away from the version of you they liked better. The one who never said no, never needed rest, never made a scene. If I could go back to 25, I wouldn't fix everything. I wouldn't erase the mistakes. I wouldn't become perfect. I would just whisper, you can let go now. You don't have to prove it anymore. You get to rest. You get to be real. You get to be loved exactly as you are. And maybe this is your whisper now. You don't have to live in survival mode forever. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to apologize for existing as a full, flawed, beautiful human being. If you're 25 right now, you're allowed to stop performing and start coming home to yourself, to your breath, to your quiet power, to your peace. That's not giving up. That's becoming.